Yeah, Joel Klatt's about to join us now. Klatt, by the way, this week on his way to see the nation's new number 7 team, Penn State, as they play host to UCLA in a great uniform game. But we've got Klatt to join us now, of course, to talk about the new number one. What conference? The new number 1 team in the country. Is it going to come from the Southeastern Conference?
Nobody plays defense like the SEC. You saw that.
And now the new number 1 team has to go on the road after that emotional win over Georgia. They've got to go on the road. It's tough to win in the SEC on the road. They're at Vanderbilt this weekend.
Got to go to Nashville, Klatt.
I don't know how you do that. I hope Justin Wilcox writes a book about how difficult it is to win in the SEC on the road.
Oh, that was at Auburn. Klatt is with us each week, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on to MyBookie.ag. Double that initial deposit bonus. MyBookie.ag. Code next round. How are you, man? You good?
I'm great. How are you guys? I'm still in kind of a state of euphoria about just the game that we got to watch. And I know Bama fans are probably not happy about, or excuse me, Georgia fans are not happy about the loss, but just like no dog in the fight. Saturday night was incredible. The entirety of that game. And I kind of walked through it on my show. It was like every aspect I loved. The environment was insane. Everyone's been talking about like Bryant-Denny. And yeah, like they seem to have just figured it out there as far as the environment goes. It was fantastic. I felt like you had 2 teams that were both making plays as opposed to making mistakes. And obviously there are mistakes made, but like big plays back and forth, trading blows, individual performances that were outstanding at the top of college football, and you got to kind of see the vulnerabilities of each team. I think that there were moments in that game where you could legitimately say each of those teams could absolutely win the national championship, and then there were moments in that game where you could legitimately say, well, if they play like this, they'll get beat 2 more times with that schedule in that league. So it was just an incredible night. I always say this, but it just was a great reminder of why this sport is so special. It was such a great night.
My hyperbolic moment of the day, a couple of segments ago, Klatt, I said, Jalen Milroe, could he end up being Alabama's best ever quarterback if he does win a championship? And I know that sounds crazy, but this is a guy that was benched about this time last year. And you heard Kirby Smart on the postgame. He's like, man, this guy might be the best running back in the nation that can throw the football. Like, I don't know how you defend Milroe. He's playing with a ton of confidence. He's got playmakers all over the place, and you can't defend what he does with his legs.
It's interesting. I had not thought about that. What a great framing. That's a really smart framing in terms of like, could he be the best ever? Can I shift the framing just like an inch?
Please.
At least in the Saban era. Let's just say the Saban era. Have we seen Alabama win a championship because of their quarterback?
I mean, in a singular game, switching from Hurts to Tua won a national championship. So yes,
correct
is the answer to that.
In the second half.
Yeah,
in the second half. But it's not like. I guess what I'm saying is like this is so clearly Jalen Milroe's team, his identity, like the entirety of what makes them great is his ability.
Yeah, I would agree with you on this. Yeah,
from McElroy to McCarron.
Yes, it's hyperbolic, and every quarterback is important, but maybe his level of importance to this team is greater than any of the other quarterbacks that actually won championships.
I could see that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, who would have thought Milroe was completing 73% of his passes a month into the season after playing Georgia? I mean, and really he's made 1-2 mistakes the entire year. He's leading the team in rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's been incredible.
He really has. The only, like, if I were nitpicking, and this is when I studied him really closely before the Wisconsin game, which it's always a bummer because like you get to study these guys, and when you get into a game that's just not a very competitive game, it's hard to dive into like the schematics or the football of it. You start into talking about overarching things. And so I didn't get to discuss this part, but I thought that his next step he was clearly early last year just like very athletic and just struggled throwing the football. And we saw that against Texas, recognizing coverages down the field and so on. That got a lot better, guys. And he developed through that to the point where I think he was one of the best 4 quarterbacks throwing the ball down the field last year. And we talked about that at one point. And then he was really good when he was throwing the ball short. And then he struggled when he threw the ball intermediate. Okay, so what I wanted to get into during the game, and obviously the game didn't allow for it, was the fact that as a quarterback, throwing the ball deep and throwing the ball short generally are pre-snap decisions. Okay, they are alerts based on pre-snap looks. So if you're going to take a shot, it is an alert that's built into the system, and you're getting the ball and you're reading basically just like that route to a check down. Okay, so it's like touchdown, check down. And then short throws under 5 yards, that's all pre-snap as well, based on what you see and where the leverage is and what's going on. Intermediate throws are post-snap decisions because that's when you're starting to have to do one of 2 things, whether it's read out the progression or read what I would call a zone movement key. So versus man coverage, you read straight through the progression. And then versus zone coverage, you're trying to bracket with the spacing of your concept a single defender, and then you're making that defender wrong. So you've got a specific zone movement key, and you're keying on him, and you're trying to make him wrong. So where I thought he needed to grow most was his post-snap decision-making, and that bore out in the numbers because intermediate, he was ranked like 90th last year, and then both in short and deep passing, he was in the top 5. So it was very stark, the differences. What I've seen from him this year is tremendous growth in that post-snap decision-making intermediate passing game. We know what he can do with his legs. That's a given, okay? He's the most dynamic player on the field anytime he's on the field. Now, can you become a guy that can control the game both pre-snap and post-snap throwing the football? And if he does that, he will be the most difficult player to defend in America.
And I want to give you a chance to continue with that thought because last week you talked about dropping the iPad a couple of times on some offensive scheming. But here comes Nick.
For Oklahoma.
Yeah. So here comes Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer. And I assume you have a great deal of respect for the defensive mind of Kirby Smart and Sherman, Will Muschamp, who worked Sunday through Friday on that staff. That's great defensive IQ. For the first 18 minutes, their head looks like they were swimming. What'd you see on the tape that Alabama was doing that was making some great college football minds, their heads swim in the first 18 minutes?
I mean, there was a lot, but also you have to combine it with the emotion and speed that everything was taking place. There is no way to replicate the speed with which Alabama is going to operate. And I'm talking about with the threat of the quarterback position, with the run game, and with the amount of shifts and motions that you're going to have, very Sarkisian-like. Like when you turn on a tape of Kalen DeBoer, whether it was at Washington or Fresno or now with Alabama, you get a ton of different sets. And you have to work so hard as a defense just to identify what's going on. Well, you could tell early in that game, and remember, Kirby comes from the Saban tree, and they want to be intricate on defense, and they want to be in proper structures based on your structure. Well, when you're changing that as often as they are, they're having to work incredibly hard before the snap to try to line up, gain proper leverage. And so when you're then creating those structures, they're working hard, and then you get some misdirection. You get on the outside, you're getting these fly sweep type motions. You're having them read all the things that's going on in the backfield. It was just too much. And you could tell it was just too much. What you saw in the second half was Georgia say, okay, you guys get in all your formations. We're going to simplify and allow our guys to just put their cleats in the ground, look into the backfield, and try to react. And I felt like that's what let them have more success defensively. As Georgia simplified defensively, they began to stop Alabama, at least on a more consistent basis. Now, you could say that Alabama got too conservative, and maybe that's the case. The basis of this is, though, the structures that Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer use are very difficult to defend. And that's what I thought you were seeing from a mind-blown perspective. It's not necessarily the concepts because, guys, there's nothing new under the sun in football. Like, you're going to see stretch read with the quarterback power. You're going to see quarterback counter. You're going to see regular read with the quarterback on the outside. Guys know how to defend those concepts. There's nothing new under the sun. But when you're making everybody work that hard pre-snap, then it becomes too much. And it was only until Georgia calmed down, simplified on defense, and stopped trying to match structures that they were able to have a little bit of success.
Joel Klatt is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He joins us each week courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Couple Monday Night Football games tonight. You can play those at MyBookie.ag. Code next round doubles that initial deposit. Double. And that is free money to play with right away. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag. Code next round. You've watched a lot of film on this Alabama team, and then you saw them in person against Wisconsin. Kirby said after the game, he was asked by the game day people about what do you do for Ryan Williams, and Kirby said, you can't double Ryan Williams and spy Jalen Milroe. You got to.
That's correct.
He didn't say those words, but this is what he meant. Klatt is you can't double him and you can't spy.
I know exactly what I remember. What he's I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of what he was saying.
So how do teams defend that moving forward? If you've got, you pick your poison there, right? You either say
you don't. You know, like, that's the thing is. Ryan Williams is a problem for defenses.
I'd say.
That's this is what makes teams great. There isn't a way to structurally stop Alabama. There are a lot of teams in the country that you can scheme to stop. You can't do that against Alabama. I don't think you can do that against Ohio State either, but in a different way because of their run game and what they've got on the outside. It has to be personnel. Like, you just have to have a corner that can match up. You have to have a safety that can cover a tremendous amount of ground. The only way to sit there and really match up with Alabama and their offense is to have great players. And to be honest with you, I think that the pressure falls on the safety. Because you can't really play quarters coverage, and you can't really play half coverage. So quarters coverage would mean that the safety is pattern reading the number 2 release. Well, that's essentially putting number 1 in a one-on-one. Well, you don't want to put Ryan Williams one-on-one with any corner, okay? Maybe if you have like a Will Johnson or a Travis Hunter, you would be like, okay, well, like, maybe we'll match up and try to play a little one-on-one. But you can't play half safety. See, quarter safety would give that guy. So when I say pattern reading on number 2, that means that safety is both in coverage and he's got a run fit and responsibility based on the read of the number 2 receiver. If that receiver blocks or goes laterally, he inserts himself into the box. So that's a way to gain an extra hat, in particular against a quarterback run, which is much needed. So quarters coverage would be something that you would go to. You can't really do that with Ryan Williams because that's essentially one-on-one coverage with the corner. Well, you can't play half safety, which is cover 2, because that's not really a run fit safety. Now, he'll come up and try to support the run, but he doesn't have true run responsibilities based on any read of the number 2 receiver. He would just be in a half position over the top helping the corner. Now, the corner's responsibility in half defense would be to jam that player in order to allow that safety time to work over the top and do all of those things. So you're both rerouting the wide receiver and making it life difficult for him at the line of scrimmage and putting someone over the top. That's what you'd like to do against Ryan Williams, but you can't do that because all they've got to do is run zone read to Ryan Williams' side, and you don't have enough hats to stop Jalen Milroe. So it's a problem. There's not a structure of defense that can do it. It just takes great players. You've got to have a safety that can be in half and also stop the run for 2 yards against one of the most dynamic players in college football. There's only a couple of safeties that I've seen on film that can do that. One of them would be Downs. I know that that's probably a sore spot with Alabama people, but like Downs is the best fill safety that I've seen on film in college football. He's downhill like a mother, even out of a half position. So again, it takes individual greatness in order to stop what they're doing. And in my estimation, here's what you do is that you take away the big plays and you force Alabama to snap it 10 times to score. So here's what I would do. If I was defending Alabama, I would say, I'm going to take away Ryan Williams and his ability to hurt me like that and in one play score. And I'm just going to force them to at least run Milroe 5 times or 6 times and do a lot of different things and snap it 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times in order to score. 1, you would be exposing the quarterback to more hits during the course of the game. And 2, you'd be playing the odds that maybe you're going to get an offensive penalty. And in a couple of those series, they're going to go backwards at least for 1 play or 2 plays and have to punt. That's what I would do. Now, whether you can do that or not based on the way that your defensive line is playing is another story. I know that's a long-winded answer, but it's the problem.
Well, hey,
it's a fantastic breakdown. Yeah.
Hyperbolic moment number 2 on the show. Ryan Williams, if he stays healthy, will be the best. No disrespect to Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, all those great guys. He will be the best wide receiver. And I was saying this earlier. I had a Tennessee fan watching the game with me Saturday, Klatt, and he was like, this dude has got to be here 3 more years? Like, what in the hell is going on? And my question to you would be, I thought it was amazing hearing that this guy wasn't even born when Nick Saban took the Alabama job. But do you think at a true 17 he could play in the NFL right now? I know that sounds crazy.
Oh, yeah. No. He could be playing next week in the NFL. There's a lot of this is one of the better true freshman groups that I've seen in a long time across the country, by the way. Look at what Raiola, how calm he looks at quarterback at Nebraska. Now, I know Nebraska's not #1 team in the country, but man, this guy looks like he's going to be playing football for a long time. Look at what Jeremiah Smith is doing at Ohio State. And I know that game was on Peacock, so not many people saw it, but that dude is just an absolute show. Just an absolute show. And here's what's wild. I don't think that that's a crazy statement that you just made, although Ryan Williams is much more different than Julio. Julio was just physically so dominant. I would say this, Ryan's a better player as a freshman than Julio was as a freshman. Granted, different offenses, and, Nick back then wasn't throwing the ball anywhere. That was a much different offense. I will put it to you this way. The 2 best wide receiver rooms of the last decade plus have been Alabama and Ohio State, without question. Guys, look at all the players that are now littered in the NFL from those 2 programs. And there are 2 true freshmen at those respective programs currently that could be the best of them all. And we're going to get to see them now for the next 3 years, which is bonkers. The play he made, it reminded me of the only guy that makes that full speed jab steps spin is a guy like Tyreek. That's the only time I've ever seen guys do something like that in the open field. It's wild, man. He's so good. 17.
You ever play with a receiver that was close to that talent?
So I got to play with no.
Sure no.
My first year as a starter, we did have a good wide receiver group. 2 guys that ended up playing in the NFL, Derek McCoy and DJ Hackett. And then on that team, we also had a young Jeremy Bloom, who was the fastest player I've ever seen on a football field. Now,
his sister, great movie, by the way, Molly's Game.
Incredible. By the way, quick tangent. That was going on when we were all playing, when I was playing with Jeremy. And I remember him at one point saying hey, do you play poker? And I was just like, no, not really. And that's now after watching that movie, I was like, holy cow.
And Jeremy wanted to be an underwear model instead of returning punts in the NFL, right?
Well, Jeremy would have killed it nowadays because of his skiing background, but he was, Jeremy wasn't like a football player as much as he was just an incredible speedster. These guys now, man, you can tell that they've been playing 7-on-7. They've been groomed to be great as wide receivers, and they're certainly doing that. It's fun to watch. It's really fun to watch.
All right, you can see.
Are you guys concerned at all? I had this take on my show, and I know you're probably going to get out of here, but
you're good.
I gave this take on my show, and Bama fans are going to just kill me.
Oh no!
I come away from that game thinking to myself if I'm Georgia, I can't wait for another shot. I'm like, just give me another shot.
Well, my only response to that is they've been saying that for 3 or 4 years, and every time they get another shot, they lose.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I do think, though, that the one thing that we've talked about that definitely showed up was there are big plays to be made on that secondary.
Yep.
for Alabama. And that, I mean, Beck threw it 20 yards or more down the field 17 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
No,
I
no,
saw-
14 of them
it.
in the
Yeah.
second half.
Yeah.
no, I said
That's
the same thing.
Staggering.
Yeah, Saturday night and all day Sunday and earlier today, I said the same thing, that because you don't have that element of what you had the first 18 minutes, they'll be a little bit more prepared of how you're going to attack them, and it'll be on Sheridan and DeBoer to come back with a counter serve, after serving
right.
it up the first time. I think that's a great point.
Yep. All right, you can see Klatt and Gus and Jenny on UCLA Penn State Saturday, 11 o'clock, Fox Big Noon Kick. Thank you very much for the
You guys know
time.
anything about UCLA?
I watched
Great
them.
uniforms.
Get some help.
I watched them again Saturday night.
It was a crime how I lost that game. I was laying 25 and a half. Dylan Gabriel, they're going in to go up 35-3 and just lays one out with seconds to go in the first half, and Addison takes it
Yes.
96 yards, and Oregon doesn't score again offensively as far as a touchdown. UCLA never scored an offensive touchdown of the game. I mean, it was the most crazy play that killed
horrific.
everything. One play.
That's horrific.
But UCLA sucks.
I don't actually bet, but I give picks on my Thursday episode of the show. And I gave Illinois covering I think it was 17.5 against Penn State. And it's 21-7. And it's 30 seconds left. And Luke Altmaier scrambles out, and there's a strip sack, and the ball is laying on the field with and I'm just like, if I get scoop and scored here on this pick, I'm going to lose my mind. And I thought to myself, this is why I don't bet. I'm watching it on in a plane, and I'm like, I'll jump out of the plane right now, and I don't even have a dime riding on it. I can't. Lance, I don't know how you do this. I can't even that ball laying on the field, and it was just kind of slowly.
I had Penn
spinning,
State.
and I'm
I was pulling for the scoop and score.
You wanted the scoop and score.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy.
All
Anyway,
right,
sorry
so
guys.
I know UCLA's bad, but you can watch them at Penn State, 11 o'clock, Fox Big Noon Kick. Thank you, Klatt. Have a great week.
You got it. See you guys.
All right, terrific breakdown on Alabama there with Joel Klatt, presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on. Double that initial deposit. 2 Monday Night Football games tonight. Another week of college football coming up. They'll double that deposit. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag. Code next round. MyBookie.ag. Code next round.